Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Welcome back, everyone. It's been, if you haven't listened to any of the podcasts since the last season 2 reviews about a year and a half ago, it's been quite a while. Like I said, it's been almost 2 years in July, and it's been quite a ride with regards to how the podcast has come along. If you haven't listened to any of the podcasts since then, please go back and check out all of the rest of the podcasts. We're on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram. We're on all the social medias. Check out the links for all of that. If you want the podcast early, then be sure to go on YouTube and subscribe Lucky Dog Podcast. And thank you for joining us. If you were brand new and old and returning viewers, thank y'all for coming back for the ride and the journey. I just want to be honest right off the top of my head. This is one of those shows that I'm bound to get things wrong when I'm covering it. It's just one of those extremely detailed shows that require multiple views. It requires multiple outlets of interpretation and predictions, and with regards to just tackling this, it's kind of a big feature to tackle. It's kind of in the realm of having to do homework on the side of it. So, give me just a little bit of a break on that, because I'm not trying to go too in depth with this and leave this podcast to be more opinionated and not so much fact-based oriented. So if we get like one or two facts wrong here or there, don't go too hard on me on the down votes. Please, stick with us. I'll be sure to try to update with the comments and, of course, the listener support. Hey, his name's Johnny B. Smith or something like that. Not Danny B. or something. If I get the names wrong or the places or from mispronouncing stuff, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm trying to have this podcast as open source as possible, so that way I can take your feedback and bring it back to you and help regurgitate right and processed facts. Like, we're not trying to spread misinformation at all. And if anything is wrong off the top, obviously, check the show notes, check the comments. We probably already fixed it, or head on to the next episode, and we will have probably covered or fixed that there. So I just want to cover that off the top of the show. And as of right now, we do not know if we're going to be covering the show episode by episode. Ideally, we would like to, but I haven't gotten 100% response back from everyone, so I want to hear back from everyone before we decide to proceed episode by episode. Otherwise, maybe look for an episode 5 review and then a season finale of season 3 Westworld review. So there'll definitely be at least a wrap up of the season. So this is the episode, let's see, Parse Domain. And I'm already sure that I've got that wrong because I'm not rehearsed in Latin. But you know what? Forgive me. Already said I'm going to fuck some things up. So let's go ahead and start with the episode. Season 3, Episode 1, directed by Jonathan Nolan, once again, written by Lisa Joy, Jonathan Nolan. The cinematographer is the cinematographer from the first episode of the series, Season 1, Episode 1, Paul Cameron, and edited by Stephen Semel. This episode went over a little bit, an hour, about 68 minutes from what I can tell. And let me go by the synopsis. By now, I obviously expect you to have seen all of Season 2, and if you haven't seen any of Season 3, Episode 1 at all, I will say they are trying to make this somewhat of a reboot when it comes to bringing a whole new atmosphere, kind of replacing, not exactly, pushing away the story that we had watched the first 2 seasons, but they really are trying to make a an effort to have an aesthetic difference from a visual standpoint and from the story standpoint. I'm sure that the messaging is going to be a little bit different as well. So I wouldn't entirely recommend jumping in this season having not seen the first or second season. I think that this is going to stand tall on those two seasons, but with an arm's length away, if you know what I mean. Like, I think this is going to have very much to do with what happened the first and second season, but I do feel like this is going to feel entirely like almost like an entirely different show. Now, with saying that, the way it starts, we're going to start talking about the plot here. I don't really give a spoiler alert for when we start talking about the plot of the episode, but this is when we're going to start talking about it. The plot of this third season, first episode is taking residence in Neo Los Angeles. Dolores develops a relationship with Caleb and comes to learn how artificial beings are treated in the real world. Well, that's kind of a broad term for the first episode, which is honestly, I don't know, that feels more of like a season long arc than just a episode 1 arc. But yes, overall, it looks like that's what's probably going to happen between these two characters. Dolores, coming off of the season 2, from what I can remember and what I recapped at the last season a year and a half ago, I'll link all of the Westworld podcasts in the show notes, so if you can't remember exactly what's going on, and if I recap it wrong of what happened in season 2, forgive me, because recalling what happened in season 2 is an utter nightmare in my opinion. Can anyone remember what happened a year and a half ago on Westworld? It felt like 4 different storylines happened and so many different things were juggling all over the place that honestly, regurgitating it sounds almost impossible. But I think, long story short, Dolores was doing some body switching and she got off the island, and now we are season 3 episode 1 takes place 3 months later after the meltdown that happened at the Westworld facility. And I believe we found out there was timelines. There was about 3 different timelines going on in season 2. It all ended up relatively merging into one, except for that one at the very end with William. Might have to come back to that on a separate episode because I don't think that William storyline is even touched in this episode. So, long story short, Dolores got off the island. Now she's on the mainland, and she's going around trying to get access into what I believe is called the Rehoboam. This is one of those words I'm going to fuck up multiple times, and I might need somebody to give me a pronunciation chart. But Dolores is Dolores is on the mainland, and in this episode, she's revisiting all of these people that have, access or have some sort of stake in this AI or company. And so, let me get a little bit of water real quick. So I can go over this episode in one of 2 ways real quick. This will be covered by pros, cons, and then we'll go into the basics, kind of the same way we do like a movie. All right. Season 3, episode 1. Still one of the best looking and sounding television shows out there. I think this looks like, it looks better than the majority of movies being produced these days. I do miss it in the way that it's shot. It's very slick. It's just beautiful. The cinematography, my goodness. Even not having them shooting out in like the desert and the Grand Canyon and places like that, I'm still very much focused and gripped and entranced by the design that is happening on this entire television show. It's a beautiful television show. The music, Raman Djimani, you've heard me rave about him all the first 2 seasons, so you don't need to hear me again come back, but he's coming back again. The new tech and attire in this movie, I'm going to call it a movie, in this television show is beautiful. And it looks realistic to what would actually happen in, let's just say, I think it's like 40, 50 years from now. I think it's supposed to be around 2050 or something like that. The cons of this episode, I thought they were trying to hide that the Francis character was dead, and I'm glad that they ended up coming out and saying that he wasn't, or sorry, that he was, and they're not going to leave that, carrot dangling for the next, 3 episodes. The pacing in some areas for this, I felt like it could have been picked up, and I'm not sure if it's me personally. It could be me. I will say that if you hadn't just rewatched the first 2 seasons, it's very easy to be confused about who are these people that Dolores is revisiting. In some areas, they're hitting the audience over the head with saying, "Hey, it's been 90 days. Hey, it's been 3 months. Hey, it's been so and so long since the accident." And so we're all trying to get on the same page about the timeline. So I think we're all on the same page about that. But when it comes to the AI company's co-founder's son has the codes, and Dolores is the one trying to, squeeze the codes out of him, although his security guy is trying to make sure that doesn't happen. And Aaron Paul is going through these Grand Theft Auto-esque missions at night to make money for a sick mother. And also, one of those missions has to do with an intertwining of car and drugs that end up almost taking out Dolores, but since she is a host, that the drugs are ineffective on her, and she ends up taking out the security head detail and ends up getting shot in the process. And then Aaron Paul, his name's Caleb, ends up running into Dolores at one point at the very end of the show, and that's how they're merging together. And so throughout this episode, Caleb, you just see him kind of going through day to day of wanting to not deal in this AI centric world. He wants to deal with real people, and one of the only real people in his life seemed to be his mother, who is forgetting about him. She has dementia, I believe. And it's kind of a cliche trope when it comes to, the guy that has to go do underground bad, crimes in order to make money for his, mother or family. It makes him somewhat, quote unquote, instantly sympathetic, but it does feel slightly of a trope. And right off the top, before I go into too many details, I'm gonna label some of my favorite podcasts that go into way more detail than I'm going to, and probably will get some plot details and facts correct where I might mess up. And they're also a lot of fun to listen to. It's the Decoding Westworld podcast, and with David Chen, Joanna Robinson, and then Bald Move podcast. They're 2 podcasts and post-show recaps. 3 podcasts that are a lot of fun to listen to as a follow-up to the television show. Helps explain the television show a little bit more, and might give you some facts and opinions and predictions that I might not have myself. And they're, just interesting add-ons to go along with the show if you have some time, some commuting time or whatever, some more listening time, you want to check out some stuff. So I'll link those in the description as well. So let's go down a couple of the things that I was, discussing about the television show, just about this specific episode. Let me see. The new introduction for season 3 is probably my favorite, although I need to go back on season 1, season 2. All of the seasons have very cinematic, beautiful, artistic ways of expressing AI to human, or kind of like matrices and just flipping them all together and becoming human kind of things. It's a very, I don't want to say, hey, this is a very cool thing, but it is a very visually interesting intro, as many as the other two are. The opening for Dolores getting revenge on that guy, pretty badass, not gonna lie. Shows her having total control of the AI house, which I think is really dope. The fact that there has been, I've seen something similar to this in Mr. Robot, and it can be horrifying to think about a host. Imagine your quote unquote Amazon Alexa. Oh, whoops! Sorry, I'm sorry I said that out loud. Imagine that, thinking you're evil or something like that, or having like a vendetta against you. It's like that. It's like that to the nth degree. Yeah, we find out this stockholder, he was also an abuser from earlier seasons, and we see earlier from the first season. And the glasses VR tech is pretty damn horrifying. I mean, I've always thought that having VR tech glasses was going to be like the coolest thing ever, but if you take it to like the nth degree and you're seeing things you don't want to be seeing, and like maybe in the future I might have contacts that show VR, or I think it's technically AR, augmented reality, where it projects like a projectile in front of you. Like, if I couldn't get those off my face, I would be freaking out. I don't even know what I'd be doing. Let me see. Oh yeah, so it shows the stockholder's wife's death, and I believe it's I don't know if it totally shows it or implies it that he did it, and it shows her in the pool as well, in the same fashion that he dies, sort of. But I mean, she gets the upper hand. It does the old switcheroo, flashes away from him, and like a hologram. And this is the same sort of hologram technology we saw him talking to an earlier stockholder, or an earlier guy he was talking to. So let's see. Aaron Paul is doing construction by day and shady stuff by night. And there's these flashbacks of... So hold on, a couple things. Aaron Paul is waking up in the same position that Dolores was waking up. I will say Decoding Westworld caught that. And I'm not going to try to regurgitate too much of what they're saying, but I thought I was noticing the framing of the way the hosts were waking up, the way the camera is panning over them, arm over the head, same thing. We're going to have to take in consideration that Caleb might, considering he was shot in the head, he might have become a host at some point. And Kid Cudi is alive in these flashbacks, and I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Later in the show, we find out that he was they were on some Russian spec ops trip or something like that. Aaron Paul got hit in the head, and Francis, Kid Cud, was taken down, and now they have created a host to call and talk to Caleb, just as like a PTSD route. And so we find this out over the course of the episode. I thought that the conversations that Kid Cudi or Francis was having with Caleb were a little stale and a little dry, and this explains everything. So they have a cool little caper with the Bluetooth diversion and the ATM robbery. And apparently, I had no idea that was Marshawn Lynch with that dope-ass t-shirt. I didn't even recognize him. I don't know if it was the hair or something or what. And he was pretty funny as well. Let me see. That was a pretty dope-looking car that Aaron Paul and them have to jump in, I believe. Or they throw the stuff in, and it's there's like glass doors and stuff. Very futuristic. The building Tessa Thompson is walking in, is beautiful. I believe I heard it's an actual real building in Spain. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but Decoding Westworld tells it again. Bernard has access to talk to himself. Bernard is taking on another personality, and forgive me, I forgot his name. That he's Armand or something like that. He's going by the name something Danger Armand or whatever, and he's in China at this meat processing facility. And while he's there, he's able to do kind of the self-analyzing test that he was doing to Dolores in the first and second season, I believe. Analyzing them, so he can analyze his Bernard personality, which is inside of him. So Bernard has like two personalities going on. It's his good and bad, and his Bernard isn't really his bad, but I would say it's more or less his like aggressive side. They'll fuck shit up, and later we see what happens with that personality. And yes, I do believe Bernard is lying to whoever Armand is, or whoever this new Arnold is. That was a pretty cool wardrobe change, I'll say, with Dolores going into the dinner thing. And I was just like, who the hell is this guy that she's like talking to? What is going on? Let me see. Part of the caper or whatever that Aaron Paul has to do is, let me see, is take care of this one guy who's freaking out about shadow people of some sort. I'm sure this will come in a little bit later. A little bit of non-sexual male nudity going on at this museum that he's freaking out at. I was like, what is going on? And I love, when Marshawn Lynch is getting pushed around, when he gets angry, the shirt changes to angry, because it has all these different emotions that light up depending on what's lit up. But I thought that was pretty cool. I love the geometric shapes and the cinematography and the places that Dolores is visiting. I believe it's the dinners she's at. I mean, just the set dressing and all of this looks so futuristic. And did it say, did she just lease an apartment via voice? I was like, can she do that? Like, what's going on? And apparently Dolores can talk to she can talk to these dope ass looking motorcycles. She can talk to cars. And it's all, I assume, wireless, and she doesn't actually have to say it out loud. But, I'm still learning. Bernard has like the red button of death, which is the Bernard button. He can turn it on, turn it off, and fucking whoop some ass in this poultry shop when they try to call him out and say, "Oh, we know exactly who you are." And he's like, "You know what? Don't hurt him too bad." Bernard on. So it got pretty crazy when Bernard flipped the switch. Flip. So there's a scene with Aaron Paul wanting to talk to a live person instead of a computer, and this is when we find out about Francis being dead, and he unsubscribes from that service. I totally relate with that. I just had a terrible nightmare experience with FedEx recently, and they nobody would answer where the hell my tracking package was. It just kept saying tracking pending for like 5 days. I finally got a hold of somebody, and it would, the 1-800 number would tell me your package is tracking and have a great day, and then the email would tell me your package is tracking and have a great day, and neither would give me the option to talk to anybody. So I can totally relate. Let me see. Did the show imply that Francis might have had a relationship with Caleb? It said that they were kind of like friends, but they didn't say that they were like friendship. It almost felt like more than that. I mean, y'all tell me what you think about that. Let's see. Dolores goes out stylishly with some dope ass action. Going back and rewatching some of season 2, I felt like Dolores could take a lot more than a single bullet or two. I know that she had the drugs and whatnot in her, and I don't know if that matters. Probably not. But I need to go back and rewatch season 2 to see how much she's affected by things. But I remember they're almost like super strong. At one point, I feel like I remember Dolores taking multiple bullets at one point, or some of the hosts taking multiple bullets. I don't know. I gotta check that out. Um, this let me this first episode of the third season is a fun introduction to Westworld. I think it was relatively and visually an amazing watch. I'd say some of the Dolores stuff was a tad confusing with regards to the John Gallagher Jr., Liam Dempsey character. I didn't 100% understand that. This was everything I regurgitated was things I had learned after watching it 2 times and watching listening to a podcast. So I did think that they probably could have been a little bit more explicit, but we're still learning about all this new AI tech and whatnot. We also get, if you have not watched past the credits, I need y'all to watch past the credits. I know this is starting to be a horrible trend in television, and I don't see the reason for it. I mean, so there's a stinger scene at the end of this first episode. Did they ever do stinger scenes at the end of the first episodes of the other seasons? I only remember them at the ending of the seasons, not the first, not the beginning. So, of the seasons. So we get a stinger scene. Go back and watch it if you have not watched past the credits. You'll be able to see a stinger scene, and I'm giving you a little second to do that. Okay, so by now I assume you've seen the stinger, and it is Maeve waking up in what looks like a World War II world, or what some people are calling Nazi world. And I did go back and try to rewatch a little bit of season 2 just to kind of refresh my mind. And I do remember she's taken out at some point when she's trying to save all of the hosts, I think. And she's from what I hear, she's laying on the beach, and Felix and Sylvester probably pick her up and fix her up, and somehow she ends up back in this world. And so the thing about Nazi world is, a year and a half ago, I don't think that we took Nazis as seriously as we currently do. I mean, Michael Crichton, I don't recall if I think he might have wrote something called Future World or something, and he's the writer of the original Westworld and all the other seasons that they're based off of it. Apparently, there's some sort of Nazi World War world, and first of all, I don't know why anybody would ever want to go back to that. That just sounds horrible. Now, I did hear the argument for wanting to go back and punch Nazis. I think you can do that without creating an entire world. We're already living in a pretty rough time as it is with the COVID-19 taken down, and then everything else under the sun just coming to a screeching halt. But overall, I had mixed feelings on the Nazi world. I don't want to say I'm not excited for it, because I really love the character of Maeve. I just was like, I kind of want to get her. I'm split between wanting to see more of the park, but not really wanting to spend time in this Nazi world. It's like, what is that good? Is that going to come from anything? And I just feel like it's going to be kind of a runaround of a plot for the first 2 or 3 episodes for Maeve, unfortunately, and then we're going to get her to meet up with Dolores. I wanted her to be out in the open, experiencing life. I thought she was trying to free her daughter at one point. I know that, did her daughter make it to the robot forge heaven or whatever that was? I need to go back, and this is one of the things I'm not going to get 100% correct on, but I remember that was a big thing at the end of season 2, and the brain balls. And so, are the brain balls that important? I'm pretty sure we've got the majority of them all locked down. Dolores is definitely, she was the one that, so it was Dolores, and she brought 5 brain balls from what I can remember, which would be Bernard, Tessa Thompson's character, Charlotte, Hale, and Decoding Westworld had different predictions than I did. Maeve's second girl. I don't want to look on the cast to see who is actually coming up on the rest of the season, so I'm trying not to do too many of those. Rose, was her name Rose? What the hell was her name? Maeve's secondary girl in the saloon. I think possibly might be her. And I think Teddy is definitely Robot Heaven. And when you're Robot Heaven, evidently you don't come back, from what the directors and writers are saying. So I think we have relatively, what is that? Bernard. Wait, Maeve didn't get out of the park, so it's not Maeve's. It's probably Bernard, Charlotte. I'm just going to put Dolores in there. I don't know how. There's got to be someone else other than Dolores, because she was the one that brought him out. Her pops. Dolores' pops. Let me see. Anybody's brain ball. I mean, there's two more that would be. Did Will have a brain ball? I know that there was this weird rule of like the host have brain balls, and then somehow the park individuals, people visiting the park, were having their memory erased, or not erased, but they was having it transferred onto a brain ball, I believe, and maybe Will has one, so that might be another. And who am I? Maybe it's not 5 brain balls. Maybe it's only 4 brain balls. But anyways, we got to keep an eye out for the brain balls. That's the real thing. Let's see. All right. Let me see. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening, watching the Westworld Season 3, Episode 1 review. We could not do it without you. Let me pull out the rest of the show notes for the end of the podcast. I don't know why I don't have that open. So for additional comments, questions, concerns, or if you want to advertise on the podcast, please email theluckydogpodcast@gmail.com. Twitter, Lucky Dog Podcast, Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, Discord. Links are down below. We are on all the social medias available. Find us on your favorite podcast provider. And if you want these podcasts early, subscribe on YouTube and you'll get them before they drop, generally on Tuesdays. We review televisions, movies, talk about media. We have something called the Aftercast, where it's behind the scenes of what's happening, generally non-movie related, or what's happening behind the scenes of the Lucky Dog Podcast. So, thank you for listening, watching Lucky Dog Podcast. We could not do it without you. 5 stars, thumbs up, whatever you got to do. Subscribe. Thank you, and take it easy.